All right, Kim Baker here with the Survivor Conqueror Ministry. I am back, and yes, my uh, microphone seems to be working now. All right, sorry about that. About earlier, um, this happens. Okay, all right, let's get into it. I'm not getting into. Okay, so who are the non-protective parents? Okay. Typically, non-protective parents can be divided into four categories. Those within the first three categories, they reject their most basic parental role to protect their offspring. Okay? All right. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Not only do they permit their children to be abused, but also they appear to favor the guilty over the innocent, the abuser over the abused. Okay? Surprisingly, abused children feel more anger towards the non-offending parent for failing to protect them. And I need to move my camera right quick. There we go. Uh, than they do the abuser for actually abusing them. Okay? So, where was Marilyn's mother when all this was happening? Silence is the voice of complacency, as the saying goes. Okay? Her silence was cloaked in a pretense that she would protect, no matter the cost. But we are going to see where that was not the case with her. Okay? Mary's mother wanted the world to believe she had the perfect family, and from the outside, that's the way they appeared. Okay, they were attractive, they were wealthy, and they were accomplished. Okay, she herself was a picture of charm, always optimistic, and she was active in civic, theater, and other organizations. Okay. She was raised in a highly regarded Denver family. She was determined to forever remain esteemed by other millionaire socialites. Okay, so Marilyn's mother was so consumed with what other people saw or thought of her or her family that she allowed this to go on inside of her home. Okay, because if you joined us last week, uh, you know that Marilyn was sexually abused from age 5 to the age of 18 until she went off to college. So for 13 years. Okay. So desperate was Marilyn's mother to disguise the family dysfunction that once, when she was hospitalized, there's the flowers again. She ordered flowers from the gift shop so she could tell everybody that they were from band. She she wanted people to think that her husband bought her flowers. Um, Pretty dysfunctional. Pretty dysfunctional. Okay. Oh, passive parent. The passive parent is usually a mother, and they give silent consent to sexual abuse by ignoring it. Okay. Well, I didn't know what was going on. Most often, she feels powerless to protect their children. Okay. Absolutely. That's the way a passive parent feels. Okay. She victimizes her child by withholding physical protection and doubly victimizes her child by withholding emotional support. Okay, so here you are, and just like today, I got a message from a young lady that basically is in this kind of in this situation. She evidently had told her mom and her family about her stepdad abusing her, and basically the family didn't believe her. Okay, so this young lady, you could tell that she's hurting. Um, but so not only was she sexually abused by her stepfather, but she's being abused by her mom and the rest of her family that don't believe her. Okay, so she's got a double whammy in her life. Okay. Next is the preoccupied parent. Okay. Preoccupied parents are so absorbed in their own personal lives or their own emotional problems that they fail to protect their children. Okay? This right here is one of the main reasons why this ministry was so important to me, because I realized that what happens is that we get so caught up in our lives and what we went through, and when we haven't dealt with the issues and we've not worked through them, not worked through the problems, then we can become so absorbed with life and what we are going through and how we feel, that then that causes us to take our eyes off our children. So what happens? It's a generational curse. Okay? And the Bible talks about it. In the Old Testament, it's talked about generational curses. And this is a perfect example of that situation. Okay? Next is a prideful parent. The prideful parent cannot or will not believe that sexual abuse could exist within their picture perfect home. Okay? And we see this in Marilyn's mother. We see her in the passive. We also see her in the prideful. Their self-centered pride prevents them from taking their own child's word that such a travesty has happened. The Bible chastised protectors of the guilty, those who fail to protect the innocent. Okay, let's see. What's the Bible say? It is not good to be partial to the wicked, to deprive the innocent of justice. Proverbs 18, verse 5. Okay? Yeah. Don't be partial to the wicked. And don't deprive the innocent of justice. They deserve it. Okay? Positive parents. Positive parents have a positive influence on their children, but cannot see signs of abuse. They look. A positive parent will look and guard against other dangers to their children, but fully trust those closest to them. Okay? This was my parents. Now, I'm not so much positive influence, but or they, my parents took good care of me. Okay, they did, but they trusted people that was close to the family, and that's where I was abused from. Was a friend of the family. Positive parents do protect if made aware of the abuse, no matter who the abuser might be. Okay, this so question: where do you think God wants you to line up at? Which one are you going to strive to fall into? Which category? Okay? What's the typical course of childhood sex abuse? How does it progress? Where does it go? Where does it start? And where is it? And we know where it ends up. But okay, let's seduction. Very first thing. Okay. The perpetrator emotionally seduces the child by developing intimacy and progressively building trust and giving pleasure. This is accomplished by becoming an attentive friend, showing preferential treatment, giving money, gifts, bribes, or rewards. Becoming an attentive friend is with appealing hobbies or interests. Okay? Family friend that abused me. This is, uh, he was an attentive friend. He showed me more interest in me than what I felt like my dad did. I got preferential treatment. I got gifts. Uh, he knew that one of my hobbies was fishing. That I loved to fish because my dad loved to fish, and I wanted to be around my dad. So he used that interest to get to that point of sexual stimulation. Okay? Then, of course, next is after the seduction comes the stimulation. Okay? How? How do they stimulate? By affirming and warm, playful wrestling and tender touching, such as hugs, gentle back rubs. Mine was foot rubs. Over time, the child becomes desensitized and vulnerable to the progression of more advanced sexual activity. Here's what we have to understand. By God's design, the body naturally responds to sexual stimulation. Okay? Yeah, so perpetrators use what God had designed and what God had given to each of us to violate us. Then comes the silence. The perpetrator moves to ensure the victim's silence through intimidation and fear-inducing threats. Okay? Now, this is one part of this that I don't, there never was anything that was said or especially said to gain my silence. A warped sense of loyalty has already been cultivated within the child through special attention, gifts, privileges. And what's really confusing to a child is this, is that, uh, you know, and this would be more of a family friend type situation, is that, if we're around someone like that, there's we probably do love them. We have a sense of love toward that person. Was it bought? Yeah, could have been with gifts. Oops, doubled up on that one, didn't I? All right, the destructive secret remains embedded for years in a quagmire of ambient feelings such as love and hate, pleasure and shame, tenderness and terror. Okay? We can have every one of these feelings throughout this process. Okay? Suppression. Okay? We know when no one rescues the child from the abusive relationship, the child feels doubly betrayed. Yes, absolutely. Any hope of ever being saved by anyone, including God, is destroyed. Okay? If you are sitting back and you're being a non-protective parent, not only are you doubling, abusing that child, but you are setting that child up to not be able to have a relationship with God. Because why? They blame God. Okay? This is why it is so important that each of us work through these issues one by one and deal with the issues in our life so that we can move on, not just for us, but for our family. The child feeling no choice but to bow to the supreme power of the perpetrator slips quietly into enslavement. Then when hopelessness reigns, the soul is suppressed and the light within the spirit is snuffed out. Have you ever looked at someone in the eyes or, in the face, and you could just see there's no light, there's darkness. And when you see people like that, you know what has most likely taken place in their life. The Bible describes men of deception. There is no fear of God before his eyes. For in his own eyes he flatters himself too much to detect or hate his sin. The words of his mouth are wicked and deceitful. He has ceased to be wise and to do good. Even on his bed he plots evil. He commits himself to a sinful course and does not reject what is wrong. We're talking about the perpetrator. That is Psalms chapter 36, verses 1 through 4. Okay, let's see. How long we been going? Oh, there we go. All right, 21 minutes. Question. I feel guilty about the sex acts my father performed on me over the years. Why didn't I stop him? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why didn't I do anything about it? Why didn't I tell? Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I do something? Answer is very simple. Victims of sexual sin are typically plagued with feelings of guilt, even when those acts were initiated by the perpetrator and not the victim. You did not cause the abuse to occur. You did not cause it to occur. When someone's sin spills acid onto you, that's a very good description of what happens. You cannot escape the impact and you can feel contaminated. The fact is, however, you did not seduce your father. Obviously, you weren't trained to stop a sexual predator, especially not your father. Take to heart these key points. Your father initiated the sexual acts upon you. You had no choice. As a child, you were not physically, mentally, or emotionally strong enough to overpower or stop him. Because he was the adult, he knew exactly what he was doing and bears full responsibility for his perversion. Although grown children typically feel guilty over such past offenses, you need to discern false guilt from true guilt. Okay? That is one of the classes that we teach here. We do a class on guilt, learning to discern false guilt from true guilt. Perpetrators are experts at making their victims feel like willing participants, leading them to feel guilty for what is actually the perpetrator's wrongdoing. This results in false guilt, When this happens, you need to seek and discover what lies you were manipulated into believing and replace those lies with biblical truth. That's what we're trying to bring to you. Biblical truth. Give you some biblical truth. Give you some uh, life skills. Okay? Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5. Okay? We're going to stop right there for just a little bit. I have a video that I want to play you.
I was sexually and emotionally abused from infancy to age 18. I can finally say those words out loud. My father raped me. Words I couldn't say for the 7,433 days I was silent. I was just a child. I had no idea what was happening to me was wrong. My father would say things like, "This happens in all families," or "What happens in the home stays in the home." He used fear to control me. I kept his secret and remained silent. The truth is, 1 in 3 children do not disclose their abuse until they're an adult. Yep, that's me. I'm a statistic. 700,000 children are impacted every year. 700,000. And 90% of those children know their abuser, like me. This is so hard for people to understand, especially when you're accusing a public figure or a community member, or someone in a prominent occupation, like a coach or a mentor or a teacher or a military officer like my father. 9 in 10 kids. This is not stranger danger. My childhood was one monotonous day on repeat, kind of like the movie Groundhog Day. I'd get up, go to school, have sports or scouts, and then abuse. Every day I saw my shadow, and I was sentenced to another 6 weeks of winter. My world was colorless. I discovered small ways to find my voice, like hiding my secret in a song. I had one of those press and play tape recorders, and I would play a song, hit pause, and then record softly through the microphone that my father was molesting me. Then I would quickly erase it. I would also write it in a journal or a notebook, and I would tear the pages out and rip them up into unrecognizable pieces. I so badly wanted to get my voice out. I longed to be loud, but I just couldn't. If you're a victim of sexual abuse, you feel muzzled or unable to tell your truth, start small. It could be a voice recording on your cell phone, a written confession to your best friend, or a letter you burn in the fireplace. Abuse and shame thrive in silence. The cycle of abuse cannot be broken until you take the first step. Not only for yourself, but also for those who don't have a voice. My father would keep me silent by threatening me every day. He would say things like, "Don't tell anyone, or you will never see your mother and brother again." This was my father. He was supposed to be the one who loved and cared for me. He'd be my best friend one day and sexually abuse me the next. I had my first slumber party when I was 13. My best friend Becca called me up and said, "Hey, when you guys pick me up, please don't have your father come alone, because he reminds me of a rapist." A rapist? We both laughed it off. I get it, okay. But this was the exact moment I realized someone else knew. Finally, there was a word for what had been happening to me. He was a rapist. As I got older and continued to learn what was happening to me was wrong, I was afraid to speak up. I desperately wanted to be loud, but I had to find the courage. The first time I tried to tell someone I was at Bible study, ironically, the topic was a parent's love for their children. With my heart racing and a lump in my throat, I raised my hand and blurted out, "My father has a different kind of love for me." Oh my God, I said it out loud. My stomach was flipping. And the youth leader says in front of everyone, "Penny, all fathers have a special love for their daughters, especially their firstborn." And that was it. It was completely glossed over. I felt minimized and alone. And if the youth leader said that all fathers are this way, it must be normal. It must be the way it is, right? But I knew deep down it wasn't. And I realized in that moment that even though she didn't believe me, I had to keep pushing. My longing to be loud needed to be a reality. I had to learn to love myself. I matter, you matter, and your voice matters. What has happened to you is not your fault. Loving yourself also means owning your truth. When I was finally able to own my truth, the power was taken away from what happened to me. I was finally able to show up for myself. If you're in a situation like I was, and your abuser's within your own family, search for someone you trust. It can be a mentor, a friend, a teacher, a coach. Once you find someone to trust, let your words come pouring out. Unleash your voice. Above all else, be daring. This can be the most difficult part. I saw my father violently push my mother to the ground when I was 17. When I saw her laying there helpless and terrified, it stirred an anger inside of me I had never experienced. All those years of abuse I had endured was for a lie. I thought I was protecting my mother and my brother, but clearly I was wrong. I ran over to him and screamed in his face at the top of my lungs, "Never touch my mother again." Standing up for my mother finally gave me permission to say no. I was able to tell my father never to touch me again. I was no longer the child that he could manipulate and control. 3 years later, he finally paid the price with an exceptional sentence of 17 years because I spoke out loud. I dared to speak out. I said to the judge, "Your Honor, have no mercy on him because he has had no mercy on us." Unfortunately, it took me another 20 years and my mother dying of cancer for me to fully unleash my voice. Shame and silence had a debilitating hold on me. I wanted to spare my mother from the horrific details. I did not want to see her hurt. If you don't deal with your demons are going to deal with you, and it's going to hurt. It's one of my favorite quotes by Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue. But it's true, it hurts. It'll keep you from speaking out, but you must. Decide your turning point and speak out, and keep speaking out. For those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind, they will still love you. When I finally had owned what had happened to me, I felt empowered to fight for federal legislation for victims of sexual abuse who have not been able to find their voice. This was one of my most proudest accomplishments. When I ultimately faced my fears, I was able to shout to the world without shame, my biological father had raped and abused me. What I'm asking for you today is to join me. Stand up and be loud. Love yourself, own your abuse, unleash your voice, and dare to speak out loud.
Uh, yeah. You know, when I talk to people and I try to tell them that, just like what she was saying, that we need to find our voice. And I understand. I understand how people feel about that. That I don't want to talk about it. I've got enough shame and guilt built up in my life that I don't want to say anything about what has happened to me and bring more on top of me. So I, I don't want to talk about it. And I was there. I understand wholeheartedly if that's the way you feel. Okay? But I can tell you from my own personal experience that once I got my voice and I was able to find my voice, that I was able to become loud. Okay? And, it doesn't, and I know that in the natural thinking process, we think, what good will it do to tell somebody? What will it do to say anything? Okay? Well, all I can tell you is this, is that when I finally were able to go public the very first time and tell my testimony, give my testimony, um, I cried. I cried my eyes out while I was talking. It was hard because it was at church in front of the whole congregation that I finally shared my story. Now, I had shared my story with my uh, wife, one of my brothers, one of my sister-in-laws. So I had slowly, over the years, I had spoken up, but it's like I would speak up to one person and then I would shut down for years and never say anything else again. Okay? So what I want to do is challenge you that this week that you find a way to finding your voice. Okay? Whether it is send me a message on Messenger. Tell me if you're not able to tell nobody else. Okay? Go to a trusting friend. Get you a notebook. Start writing. And it doesn't matter if it is 20, 30 pages long or if it is one sentence. Get a starting point. Just like what she was talking about. Get a starting point. Because I will just tell you that, and again, in the natural, this doesn't make sense, that when you tell and you start opening up and you start getting your voice and you start being loud, that what you realize is that you've been a prisoner of your past all this time. But once you start facing it and you start talking and you start sharing, and then then you move on to forgiveness. And oh, did I just open up a can of worms right there? But it's we don't understand how important forgiveness is to healing. Okay? And we're not talking about that we go and we tell our perpetrator face to face, hey, I forgive you. Okay? Now, if you get to that point and you want to do that, that's up to you. Okay? But you don't have to. But I could just tell you that it was I when I got to these points and I got to these levels. It's like I was let out of prison. And it was just like the heaviest load that was heaped upon my shoulders was gone. Okay? All right, we're going to stop right there because I do have a couple quick announcements and stuff that I want to bring up. So we'll start out next week. What common challenges do survivors of child abuse face? Okay? And again, this is, I apologize if you tuned in earlier at 7, didn't have, I had to go redo my page real quick. And so that's the reason why I come back on at 8 o'clock. And I apologize for that. And I will try to make sure that next week at 7 that everything is working right. Hopefully. Keep my fingers crossed. Okay. All right. Down at the bottom, you're going to see the ticker where it says bscministry.com. That is our website. Okay. You can go to our website. You can download this material, the childhood sex abuse. Okay. There's a manual and a workbook there. The workbook is basically just a lot of the questions that we go through here or other questions that I have come up with. Okay. So what you can do, you can download this material. You can follow along with us then next week with the material, or you can just follow along on the screen, however you want to do it. But once you go through it, I recommend go to the back, go to the workbook, and go through and re-answer the questions, okay? And here's one thing I want you to understand is this, okay? Your response to things to questions or and things like that, there's really no wrong answer, okay? Because your answer reflects where you're at right now, okay? And that is one reason why I added the study material. I mean, done the questions, or and study questions in the back, is because what I try to get people to do is once they go through the class and they answer these questions and they write out their answers, is go back at some point and look back through your book and go back and look at your answers. Because here's what you're going to find out that you will find out, and you will see this, okay, is that where you're at today will not be where you're at tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. Okay? And just because you go through this and you start healing, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to come up in the future and you might need to go back and re-look at things. Okay? But, all right. Also, at our website, okay? Now, this is the hardest part for me to do, to ask this, but I have a PayPal button there because I am a nonprofit ministry. I depend upon donations because since 2012, I have never charged anybody anything, books, materials, videos, whatever. I have given it away for free. We've always done that. And that will not change. Okay? I will not tell you, hey, you need to pay for this book. If you want to download that book, you got to pay for it. Won't tell you that. Okay? But what I do hope that you will do is you'll talk to God, you'll pray and see if God wants you to become a partner with this ministry. Okay, you can do any amount. You can do a one time. You can do weekly. You can do monthly. You can do yearly. Whatever, whatever, and what any amount will be appreciated very much. Okay, but so be be here next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. We're going to start out with what common challenges do survivors of child abuse face. Okay, this Sunday at 3 o'clock there'll be I call it surviving the storm. Okay, and all it is it's going to be about 5 to 10 minutes. Uh, some of the things that I post on Facebook during the week, I'll pick out one thing that I posted, and what I'll do, I'll expand on that. Okay, talk about it a little bit. Then at 7 o'clock on Monday night, I'm doing what is called Preview Monday. That is the preview of what's coming up the very next night on Tuesday night. Okay? And what I'll do is I'll pick out one topic and I'll go through and give you the rundown for what we're going to try to look at. Okay? We may get it all. We may not get all of it done. But it will be an outline of what will be coming up on Tuesday night. Okay? All right. Thank you. If you're on Facebook, please hit one of the buttons. You can leave me a chat. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And God bless and have a great rest of your week. And I will see you Sunday at 3 o'clock, Surviving the Storm. God bless.